All right, boys and girls, today we are going to be practicing a brand new strategy that we've never done before. And this strategy is to encourage talk and discussion by actually prohibiting talk. So we're not actually going to be talking. We're going to be reading an article on the solar system and how it was created. And we're going to be incorporating our writing skills based into our discussion. So today, with the article that we're reading, you're going to be put into a small group. There's going to be 4 groups. And in your group, there's going to be markers for each student. So we have been practicing strategies on questioning. We have been practicing summarizing, inferencing, making predictions. And we're even going to incorporate a little bit of drawing into this strategy today. So this strategy is called the poster strategy. And it's primarily working on our discussion. So as I said, we are not actually going to be talking. We are going to be conversing with each other and discussing with each other through writing. So before we break off into our groups, I've got 4 students who have been working on the questioning and answering relationships that are going to demonstrate this for us. So this first paragraph that I will be reading out loud, because while I'm reading, you guys will be writing down questions and answers with your group. They are going to demonstrate this up here on the whiteboard of some options you have based off of what I have over here on the board. So will those 4 students please come up? I'm going to give each one of you a whiteboard marker. And remember, you are writing on the poster. This whiteboard is going to act as the poster. I'm going to read this out loud, and when I'm done, you might not be able to see right now, but afterwards they'll move, and we'll see what they've discussed with each other through writing. Okay. So, as I'm writing, you guys can make notes. I know it's with the board, it's kind of hard for room. All right. Billions of years ago, our solar system formed. The solar system that we live in has a star at its center. It is our sun. 8 planets orbit it. There are 2 different types of planets in our solar system. The 4 closest to the sun are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. There are smaller and made mainly of metals and rocks. The 4 outer planets are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They are larger and made mostly of gases. What are planets? Where did they come from? Why would some be rocky and some gaseous? What is our planet like? We're going to give them a minute to finish up their discussion and writing and see what they've come up with as a group. So this reading strategy not just focuses on our writing, but our discussion of asking questions while we're reading, making predictions and inferences. I see some of them are kind of stopping, going back in their reading to see if they missed anything. Because as I'm reading, it might be hard to keep up with your writing. When you feel you have made as many notes or questions as you can, you guys can go back to your seats. All right, guys, you can finish up and go back to your seats. So the rest of us can see what you came up with as a group. Thank you so much. All right, so these are some things we see. Now that they've moved, we can kind of see. I see a lot of questions. Oh, and I see someone has put an A. I'm assuming that is an answer. So my group who is helping demonstrate this activity. Let's see what they've come up with. Someone here has circled billions of years. Exact. Is that a question mark?
Yes, what exact year?
So what is the exact year? We have a question. Then we keep going. Why do they orbit? 8 planets orbit it. Why do they orbit it? Was the question, what is it? Or you're just asking why they orbit?
Yeah, they could orbit something else.
Okay. I see someone is circled. They are smaller and made mainly of metals and rocks. And then I'm assuming this arrow is to the circle part, correct? That allows me to know what she's talking about. Why, where do they come from if they are in space? How did the metal and rocks get up there? Great question. I notice up here, I think because the sun controls them. So I noticed that Kiala was attempting to answer in discussion, but I like that she put think. So she's not entirely sure. This is a brand new unit, so we don't have too much background knowledge of the planets. I see down here, we have another why, and why are people studying this? So a few things I want to point out before you branch out into your own groups. If you start underlining things like some of our group members here, tell me the purpose of that. So this isn't so much as note-taking skills. The purpose and strategy of this is to discuss. Tell your group members why you underlined it. Why did you think this was important? Do you want to summarize this? So make clear in your groups and you're discussing and writing. Yes, Vaughn?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Are we meant to underline the words on our paper since they're smaller, or can we write them off to the side?
Absolutely. You have that whole outer spot. And Christian?
Are we allowed to use forms of communication such as note cards?
Nope, that's what the poster's for. All right, this is what we're going to do now, boys and girls. You are going to branch off in your groups. Once we get settled, I'm going to begin reading this article out loud. All right, so in the library is going to be group 1 working on the strategy of discussion. That group is Jade, Victor, Avery, Nyla, and Eduardo. Just get comfortable. Group 2 is going to be by the Peace Corner. That is Shabib, Shannon Noel, William, Blake, and Kezia. Group 3 will be Kiala, Vaughn, Enzo, Dylan, and Seth over there. And then, you guys can come up front. Ron, you're up here. All right. Everyone should have a marker on the ground, Mr. Dillon. All right, 5th and 6th graders, voices off, ready to go in 3, 2, and 1. So I have numbered these articles. I'm starting on number 1. Make sure everyone has a spot and some room. On target, Dylan. Let's go. All right, and then afterwards we will actually discuss and work on the strategy of discussing out loud. So I am starting at the birth of the sun on number 1. The birth of the sun. I will make sure to stop in between, giving you enough time. The birth of the sun. Let's make sure Dylan can get in here. Let's review how our sun came into being. 5 billion years ago. A giant cloud floated in our Milky Way galaxy. This cloud was made up of dust and gas. It had some of the heavier atoms. These heavier atoms had been formed when some stars died. Right below it, I'm going to continue reading. The cloud began to contract. It collapsed on itself. Atoms separated. Then they bumped against each other. The collisions made heat. the atoms collided more and more, and they became so hot that they fused together. As they did, they transformed into enormous energy. Suddenly, our sun was born. I'm going to stop there, giving you enough time to catch up in your discussion of writing. We want to make sure in discussions we are seeing what others are trying to ask. Feel free to answer right below one of their questions or make a comment. All right, I'm going to continue reading of the birth of the planets. Some of the material in the cloud didn't become part of the sun. The leftovers swirled around it. They flattened into a disk of dust and gas. Material in the disk began sticking together. Below we have each planet in our solar system is unique, and they vary in size and composition, and you see the image there. Each planet began as microscopic grains of dust in this disk. Atoms and molecules began to stick together. Some built up into balls. As they grew larger, they brought other objects closer by gravity. I'm going to continue onto the third page at the top where it says, gentle collisions helped the objects combine and grow. For millions of years, they orbited the sun and bumped into each other. When it was over, 8 planets remained. I love seeing the discussions right now on all these posters. But there are rules about what makes planets. To be called a planet, it must orbit the sun. That was someone's question earlier. It must also be big enough to have its own gravity. Gravity makes planets round. Gravity also helps clear other objects out of their way. In 2007, scientists determined the age of our solar system. They concluded that it formed 4.568 billion years ago. Christian? The science discovered this by determining the age of rocky materials from the asteroid belt. The belt is an area filled with millions of asteroids. Asteroids are small, rocky, icy, metallic bodies. They were left over when the solar system formed. I'll give you a minute to catch up. Make sure you have arrows going to anything you may be questioning or answering so your other group members know what you're discussing about. I'm going to continue at the bottom. As the solar system formed, the sun sent our energy in winds. These powerful winds blew the gases of the 4 planets closest to the sun. Without their gases, these planets became smaller. Only their rocks and metals were left. That's why they are called rocky planets. The 4 outer planets are much farther from the sun. They were too far away for the sun's wind to blow away their ice and gases. These outer planets stayed in a gas form. The only hard part was a small rocky core. Give you a minute to catch up before I read the last page. Great job, guys. to continue reading. On page 4 at the top. Between the inner and outer planets lies the asteroid belt. No planet formed in the belt. Jupiter is incredibly large and therefore has a strong gravitational pull. Astronomers think Jupiter's gravity prevented a planet from taking shape in the asteroid belt. Jupiter is 11 times the size of Earth. Of the 4 rocky planets, Mercury is the smallest. It's half the size of the Earth. Earth and Venus are almost the same size. Mars is about half their size. Astronomers believe that a small object must have hit Mercury, vaporizing its crust. The impact left behind only its large inner core. Earlier we spoke about the climate and conditions on different planets. The next section is on conditions on Earth. When the rocky planets first formed, they were melting rock. Over hundreds of millions of years they cooled. Eventually, Mercury and Mars hardened completely. Only on Earth, and possibly on Venus, have conditions remained in an in-between state. Earth's crust is solid rock. Beneath the crust is the mantle. It's the layer separating Earth's core from the crust. The mantle seems solid. The mantle is hot and melts sometimes. It flows slowly over time. At the center of Earth is a sound iron core. It spins in hot liquid called magma. Some scientists use the term Goldilocks conditions to describe conditions on Earth. This comes from Goldilocks and the 3 bears. In the story, Goldilocks wanders into the home of the 3 bears, and the bears are away. She tries out their porch, their chairs, and their beds. She finds some too hot or too cold, too hard or too soft, too large or too small. But one of each is just right. Likewise, Earth is not too hot or too cold, not too big or too little, not too near the sun or too far away. It is just right for life to grow. I'll give you a minute before I read the very last part. All right, the last section before we share out what we discussed, Earth's moon. The rocky object nearest to us is the moon. The moon orbits Earth, not the sun, so it is not a planet. The moon is about 1/4 the size of Earth. The origin of the moon remains mysterious. Scientists today believe that a very small planet must have collided with Earth about 4.5 billion years ago. Some material flew off into space. There it settled into orbit and came together as the moon. The moon actually affects life on Earth. The collision that produced the moon tilted Earth on its axis. This causes Earth seasons. The side tilted toward the sun longer as we go around the sun receives more sunlight. The moon's gravity also makes the oceans tight. I'll give you about 1 minute to finish up discussing. Take one last look at your group members, maybe questions or answers to see what you can discuss with them. Quietly. Once you feel you're done, just put your caps on your marker so I know.
Oh my god. The cloud began to
What we're going to do now, boys and girls, is I'm going to call on someone from each group to summarize or point out some key guys discussed in writing as you were reading an article, believe it or not, together. As I was reading it out loud, you guys were reading along with me and discussing it. So I want to hear what your group members really ran with, or maybe what you got stopped with, you had a lot of questions on, and maybe no one got to answer. Miss Kiala, I'm going to start with you. While Kiala's sharing, please make sure you're listening. You guys might find some similarities. Kiala, what did your group discuss?
We discussed, like, a lot of people had a lot of questions on, where it says, this cloud was made up of dust and gas. So, like, a lot of people asked, did the dust and gas come up from, like, the earth? And, I think one person answered, that it was basically just carbon dioxide from
So was this an answer that they felt firm about, or is this maybe an answer based off of prior knowledge? Was that noted in your discussion? Okay, very good.